Hi, I'm Anthony Pugliese, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but on behalf of the IIA, I extend my sincere best wishes and congratulations to IIA Indonesia for assembling what I'm certain will be a highly educational and entertaining program for this year's conference. I'm also quite excited to share with you a short presentation that provides a glimpse into the IIA's global strategic plan and elaborates a bit on the challenges and opportunities we expect to see for the profession in the coming months and years. These risks and opportunities shape our global strategic plan. They also raise a level of urgency for practitioners to not only learn to anticipate changes in a dynamic and volatile risk landscape, but also to nimbly respond to our stakeholders' needs. So, let's get started. I'd like to spend some time today talking about the IIA's global strategic plan. Now, this plan is really intended to be a template for all of our 110 plus global affiliates to really understand where we see the direction of the profession headed. And let me share a little bit about just the context of how we sat down to develop a plan like this. We began in April and have just finished that with approval from our global board of directors on August the 5th of this year. So a little bit of context about what were we thinking about and what things were important to us and where do we see the profession headed in light of everything that's going on, both from an environmental perspective, a social perspective, a governance perspective, and even an information technology perspective. So we know there's a lot of things out in the environment right now that impact organizations around the world, and in fact, professions around the world, whether we're talking about business models or competition or technology, things like big data and blockchain and crypto. There's just so much happening that there's a need to put all of it into context and really understand what it is we believe the internal auditing profession has in front of it, and to make sure we maximize on all the opportunities, and to the extent we can, we focus on the things that matter and minimize some of the risks to the profession. So we know COVID-19 has really changed everything. It's exacerbated some of the existing challenges that we faced, but it's also brought several examples of opportunity. For example, global political and societal fractures have absolutely occurred as a nationalism has taken off around the world, as COVID has really made a lot of countries very insular in their thinking. And also, we've seen the market in reaction to COVID really begin to concentrate into the technology sector. And that's everything. The explosion of crypto and blockchain, the really unrelenting use of artificial intelligence, and of course, the unrelenting problems that we've had with cybersecurity around the world. In fact, we hear about some of those issues every day. And then we also see some values-driven pressure that comes from consumers, employers, society, government, and just a change that's happening at an alarmingly fast pace, but one that we really believe the profession is well suited to take advantage of. So we know that there's several really big trends that are happening in the marketplace that impact not just the profession, but also the overall way that we look at associations as an industry, as a business, for how we represent the profession. We know that there's been a very big shift to the talent economy in which people are just looking at the most valuable talent they can find and understanding that talent is really the commodity in today's environment. We also know that there's been a shift to innovation, inclusion, purpose, and more. And we have to remember that all of these are important, that they're reflected into us as an association, us being all 112 of us around the world. We know that there's a new generation that's not tethered to industrial mindsets, and that basically means people don't go and work for the same place, nor do they keep the same career for a lifetime. A lot of changes occur, especially with some of the newer, younger generations. We know that there's a very, very high need for us to personalize and make sure that we don't look at things always from the perspective of tradition or bylaws or formalities, because younger generations are less attracted to that. And that is a cornerstone of a lot of associations now and in the past. We also know that, as I am, everyone is accustomed to finding everything they need online. And honestly, they can find just about anything. So how do you make an association offering a value proposition to so many people have something unique that can't just be found by a quick Google search? And then lastly, we've seen a very large transition to non-traditional credentialing to demonstrate experience. And if you can imagine, in some parts of the world, Smaller forms of credentialing are just as important or growing than maybe one large exam that demonstrates competency, like our CIA exam. So if you take all that and then you kind of put in all the changes that are occurring with technology, you can understand that these trends have a very strong and direct correlation to us as an association and to our profession of internal auditing. So let's keep going with that. Associations and generations. So right now, for the most part, we have two generations in the marketplace that most associations are catering their value propositions to, and that would be the baby boomers and Generation X. So if you add up all of the people that are in the baby boomer category and the Gen X category, you're looking at about 2.6 billion people globally. But if you turn your attention to Gen Y, or the millennials, and Gen Z, the newest generation about to enter the workforce, we have 4.25 billion people in that population. So if you think about all the slides before, the one immediately prior where I talk about changing and macro trends affecting the profession, we really need to start looking at how that 4.25 billion audience is best served by understanding what their expectations are in the marketplace. And how do you make a model that's really based a lot in tradition, bylaws, and formalities adapt to that need as our audience and our future members change and have different expectations. One of the other important data points that we look at is what are the global perspectives on risk? If you could summarize that to its highest level, and the World Economic Forum does have an amazingly good process for analyzing that and giving us some information about it. So for example, look back to 2010, seems like a long time ago, but the asset price collapse created a global concern about just whether markets were able to sustain the values that they were having at the time. The Great Recession resulted in a ton of fallout and economic slowdowns around the world. And we also had issues with the aging populations that created concerns around the world. And 2015, go forward 5 years, interstate conflict was an issue. If you can think about the global geopolitical things that were happening in the world at the time. Extreme weather patterns, failure of national governance, all issues of critical importance. And then when you get to 2021, no surprise, we see infectious diseases as one of the biggest issues, as well as climate action failure. So you can start to understand we have to think about how COVID affected our plan, how climate action or sustainability reporting, or ESG, impacts our plan and our projections on where the profession is headed. And so some of the other areas, weapons of mass destruction, biodiversity loss, they inform our thinking, but clearly the top two on all of these have an impact for how we look at the plan and what things we want to be cognizant of as we prepare our strategies and tactics. So as I mentioned on the other slide, infectious disease was something that we needed to think about as a world risk, a global risk that everyone was thinking about. So when we asked our members what they thought, they told us that close to 50% of organizations that they work for really had an extensive impact because of COVID. And if you piece together all the things that we said in previous slides, it'll show you why governance issues, business continuity issues, third-party risk issues, all kind of are incorporated in that perception. And less than 1% thought that COVID had no impact on their businesses. But then when you asked our members, what did you think the impact was on internal audit? Fortunately, 18% said that it was extensive, but 50% and more thought that it didn't have as great an impact on internal audit. So another data point that informs us that internal audit was able to some degree to step to the plate and really work with management with a seat at the table on how they could address some of the risks and opportunities that were presented because of COVID. So what do we do with all that? We also know that in our own profession, we're seeing our own view of risks. And this is also from our On Risk 2021 report. No surprise, cybersecurity has come to the very top of that list. We see third-party relationships and supply chains now at greater risk because we've seen what happened when they're disrupted. We know that boards who may not have been as prepared as they could have been to the crisis that unfolded now want to be prepared in case there's another one. Sustainability or environmental, social, and governance issues also becoming a huge issue, and only recently in North America has that taken a stronger and stronger presence in our government. Disruptive innovation, economic volatility, organizational governance. How do senior managers, senior management around the world now look at risk and respond to it. And what roles are they expecting our members to play in making sure governance is improved? Data governance, along with cyber issues, has also become a critical point. Talent management has really changed because of all the people that are now telecommuting. Telecommuting presents unique challenges, some of them including IT risk, by making sure that all those computers and laptops around the world are secure, but also how does that impact how an organization's culture rolls out? People dispersed all over the planet in some cases, doing work for an organization that's headquartered maybe in another country. That comes with it some unique challenges as well as some really good opportunities. So being able to access talent globally is huge. And then last and certainly not least, business continuity. What happens when you're faced with a crisis at the level that we all were with COVID-19 and as it still continues to unfold? So how do we take all of this and then look at where we want the profession to be headed, and how can we as an organization, an association with a very large global footprint, really respond to all these risks, and I would also say opportunities, and help prepare our members for the future, and what I would consider a very bright future given our ability to take a look at these risks, mitigate these risks with management, and also take advantage of opportunities that they all present and not be caught behind the eight ball. So generally speaking, if you take all the research that's in the marketplace, as we see so many associations not doing well, and then so many that are actually exceeding or excelling, what are the secrets? What's the recipe for how do you make an association successful in 2021 and forward? Well, we know that solving for workforce issues and to keep that pipeline of new people coming into the profession is very critical, and very few organizations can do that like the IIA can for its members, for its future members. How do we make sure there's a population of internal auditors being groomed and waiting to become a part of our grand profession? We also know that disruption is something that we can't avoid anymore and that we have to embrace. We also have to look at where consolidation is appropriate within our industry so that we take advantage of where there are strengths and mitigate the weaknesses that are out there. We also look at our brand overall. What does our brand convey to someone when they see our logo or hear our name or visit our websites? What is the corporate brand, our product brand, and our market brand? And do they all tie together and convey a message or an image that we want our members and the public and all the people that hire internal auditors, what do they think when they hear the words IIA, internal audit as a profession, and certified internal auditor as a credential? We look at our business models. Probably one of the most important is how are we doing business, and are we meeting the expectations of certainly younger members, but I would probably say for every member, who are used now to a very unique form of e-commerce that was not even present 10 years ago, what we call frictionless experiences where it's just easy to do business with us. We look at whether or not advocacy is properly coordinated and acted on and given to members as information to let them know that we're acting on their behalf and representing their needs and the needs of the public at large. And also, are we representing internal audit, not just in advocacy with governmental or legislative bodies, but are we also looking at all the committees and organizations that do standard setting and others to make sure our voice is heard and the interests of our members are thought through and acted upon? Marketing automation, new modes of marketing, personalization, segmentation, all very important so that we know that when we talk to somebody and they're a millennial and they have a certain mindset about business, or we're talking to a boomer and they have a certain mindset about business, that we're talking to them in a way that makes sense. We've personalized and understand the needs of them as an individual, not just a homogeneous population. And then lastly, are we using strategies that we consider agile and that can really react well to market volatility and fluctuation? And certainly that's what we've seen with COVID-19. But if you look back in time, there's a ton of examples of when we could have done a little better in this respect. So our strategic planning approach, let me talk a little bit about that. We really wanted an approach that was intuitive and simple, yet had the impact that we wanted it to have for the profession and growing profession. So where are we now? Where do we want our profession to go? And just exactly how will we get there? And when we do get there, how will we know? How are we measuring success along the way? So we also know that any strategic plan really has to look at a certain horizon. And this is a model used by McKinsey of looking at the first 3 years, and then the first 5 years, and then the first 12 years. How do you look at what needs to be done, in what order, so that when you get to that second horizon, you're ready. And when you get to that third horizon, you're ready. And what things in the first horizon do you need to be doing to make sure you are ready for the second and third horizon? So we also took that into account when we built our plan. And you'll see some of that when I show you the actual goals that are part of our strategic plan. So here's the real gist of our plan. 6 goals at the most strategic level. 6 goals that really, really help us position the profession and our members for success. So the first one, if I could read to you from left to right, reimagine and transform our organization. This is IIA looking inward to make sure our business models and the way we react to our market opportunities and the way we represent our members, that all of that is best in class. The way we structure ourselves, the way we do business between affiliates, all of that has to be thought about and rethought and really imagined differently, including our IT infrastructure, so that our members and customers can have the best experience when they deal with us, and perhaps not a better experience when they deal with our competition. We have to be there and we have to be relevant. Secondly, promote competency in learning, something I consider a cornerstone of this overall plan. And that is, are we preparing our members with fundamental skills that are needed to be successful in the profession and to serve clients and employers around the world? And when I talk about competency in learning, I speak to whether or not we can help our members develop and use new skills versus maybe some of the other models of learning that are more training oriented to raise awareness of topics. Both are important, but we strongly believe that our profession needs to be upskilled in certain areas, including the very important topic of information technology. And if you read our IPPF, you can see where technology is highlighted all over our standards and our implementation guidance. Then we look at growing membership and membership models so that we can be flexible and agile and adaptive to what the market's asking us to do. So we also want to make sure that when we look at who our members are, that we're including the entire ecosystem of who is part of internal auditor. Certainly internal auditors and certified internal auditors are part of it, but what about the experts and the professionals that assist the profession and what they do? Could we be more valuable to them so that they can be more valuable and part of our profession in helping our members? Advocacy. Advocacy is something I strongly believe that we have a lot of opportunity in. And as I mentioned before, this is advocacy in legislative or governmental agencies in making sure that they understand what internal audit is all about, what a certified internal auditor does, and where we see the vision of the profession evolving. And again, as I mentioned, it's also representing our interests and those of our employers and the public and all the different forms of standard setting and other public interest areas where we know we have something to say on behalf of the members and on behalf of the profession. Evolve image and heighten brand awareness. A concerted effort globally to do this would have a dramatic impact on what the public thinks of when they hear again IIA, internal audit, and certified internal auditor. And how do we control or manage the perceptions people have or reactions people have when any of those terms are mentioned? And how do we continue to evolve it into the future? And where do we want that to evolve to? Very important. And if you think again, all 112 affiliates working together with these goals, we have a dramatic impact on the world, the profession. And then lastly, one I really enjoy, enable the profession for the future. And what we're talking about here are what things should we be doing now that will make the profession of the future ready and conducive to the internal auditor of the future. Things like ensuring that students are properly trained on internal audit so they know we exist and it's a profession they want to be a part of. Making sure our standards, the IPPF, is best developed to match the evolving needs of our members, and so much more. Very exciting part of how we look at the plan. And really, if you think back on the McKinsey model, things that we do through all parts of the planning horizons for a strategic plan. So just to give you an idea, and not to get too deep into the process, but our strategic plan has a framework. At the highest level on the top of this slide, you'll see the goals that I just went over, all 6 of them. All 6 goals are supported by distinct objectives underneath each one of them. For example, when we talk about competency in learning, we may say we want to have IT as a focus. That's an objective under that goal. And then strategies are the methods and the capabilities to achieve the objective. So perhaps under strategy, you have, for IT training, you have exactly what are the IT areas that you want to provide training on and how. And then underneath the strategy is how we get it done, day-to-day operations, the tactics. And something new and unique and very important is how do we measure all that in a continual way that really allows us to process and prove and really never consider our plan finished because it's in a state of constant evolution, something any strategic plan in today's environment has to incorporate strongly. And that's why recently here at Global Headquarters, we have developed and put in place a new overall strategic planning team. So when you take all the things that we've mentioned, our goals, our objectives, our strategies, and our tactics, and you put it together, what we've completed is really a detailed analysis of what we need to do next for each of those 6 goals, as you can see on the screen. And what we don't have on here are all the tactics that bring each one of the strategies to life, and then our ability to measure and monitor that. And to make sure we can do that, the IIA has recently put in place a strategic planning function that allows us to monitor all these goals and related objectives and strategies and tactics in a way that helps inform us if we're really on target and on goal at any point in time. And we hope to see that be something we can globally monitor. When we do this, as I mentioned, the plan is never really finished because there are so many data points and so many sources for us to have intelligence that inform the plan. And at a given point in time, this is coming at us fast and furious. And we have to learn how to synthesize, understand, and realize whether or not things have to go into the plan to change it. And things always will. We have our committees, we have our marketing functions, we have our sales functions, membership telling us what they want. We have so many different segments around the world and teams that give us information. We soon hope to be using big data. We have our customers and so many other points providing us the valuable intelligence that we need, as well as our own research and our own process monitoring of what's going on in the world that would provide us the opportunity to tweak our plan or change our plan in ways that would make it even better as we move forward. And again, evergreen, always changing, always being out in the market, looking at what's going on and listening to our members and listening to our affiliates around the world and our affiliates listening to one another around the world and informing the entire process. So factors that will constantly tweak or change our plan other than those sources of intelligence that I just mentioned, well, there's business models that change all the time. Business models were probably fueled a lot by technology, but they could also be just the way people are doing business. We see globalization, we see nationalism. How does that change the model, or does it? Technology, not only is that a necessary skill for internal auditors, it's because the technology impact on the companies that we work for is so tremendous. And we need to make sure that our members have the skills to do that, but we also need to make sure that we have reflected that in our plan. If the next great technology is something that changes internal audit, we need to recognize that. And perhaps we start using the competency and learning goal, or perhaps we start using the advocacy goal to demonstrate how we've adopted the plan to take account for technology. We look at the global landscape. The world is always changing, as we all know. It's changing sometimes in one way and then the next day the next. So what do we do with the global landscape as it changes? How do we make sure that we tweak that and put it into our plan? The workforce, as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, is dramatically changing as a result of COVID. And probably a lot of that change is here to stay, or at least a portion of it, where we see more and more organizations embrace hybrid working models. What does that mean? Does our profession need to adapt to that? Certainly it does. But in what ways? And how can we help facilitate that? Then regulatory complexity. As I mentioned earlier, just here in the United States, we're seeing ESG become a topic of major importance as our administration here begins to look at making that into law, where parts of the world have already done that now for more than a couple of decades. So how do we reflect that into the plan? And again, how do we work together, all 112 parts of IIA, in a way that's best serving the needs of the profession? And then last and certainly not least, what about competition? What about organizations that look at our members as part of their ecosystem and are competing for the same market share? And what can we learn from what our competitors are doing? And how at times can we actually partner with our competitors to have an even more valuable proposition for our members? A lot to think about and a whole lot of opportunity embedded in all this as long as we're watching. One of the most important things, and I've been asked this before, is are you sure that this is something that's taking care of the members? And the answer is yes. We truly believe that the plan drives innovation and it creates a platform that we can really say we have sustainable growth in our eyesights and our lens, and increases the value of the IIA to all of our members and to the profession at large. And again, the public interest is always part of our value proposition. And are we constantly increasing value and providing what our profession so desperately needs at times in such a fast-changing environment? So we will continue this dialogue with affiliates and chapters about ways we can align and adopt the plan in specific markets and regions and countries. And I'm committed to making sure our plan is heard by all of our affiliates, that we address any questions, and most importantly, that we form new relationships to work together that are conducive, not just to the conduct and the achievement of the plan, but they're all looking at the best interests of the profession at large and our members. And one last comment. We don't think our plan is perfect, and success is not final. Failure isn't fatal, but we really believe it's the courage to continue that counts and to continually evaluate whether we're on track. I did borrow a quote from Churchill, but I hope you'll agree, and I hope you'll be a part of the process that helps us make this plan better and better as we progress and mature in the process that we're using. Thank you everybody for listening. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them, and I thank you very much for your time and patience. Thank you.